There he is. There he is. Started out like this, smaller than life and very reflective. Now here, just about life-sized, completely unreflective. Sort of got a matte finish going on today. Me, the guy on the t-shirt, Malcolm Tent, coming at you live right now on the Facebook. Soon to be archived on my YouTube channel and stored on my permanent record forever on Facebook. Yes. How do you like this non-reflective matte finish? I'm kind of surprised. How come no punk rocker out there has taken the pseudonym Matte Finish? Think about it. That's a good one. We're going to be talking about a lot of really great pseudonyms today. And Matte Finish is not one of them. But maybe we've just planted the seeds of greatness in some young punker's mind or some old punker's mind to change their name to Matte Finish. Yeah. I might as well get some of the commercial bourgeois out of the way first. Everybody knows that Derek Giles knows as well as anybody else, because he's a regular watcher and listener, that there's always a commercial price to pay when you watch Tent Talks Tunes, because nothing in this life comes free. I'm just going to take a quick moment to mention that, yes, what you saw right here is a cassette. This is a cassette of me. It's entitled Malcolm Tent, Radio Blah Blah. Awesome live set that I played on WRPI in Troy, New York a bunch of years ago. Completely live, in the real, in the raw, no overdubs, no funny stuff. That's one of my things. Another one of my things is my fabulous noise band, Ultra Bunny. You've probably seen the t-shirt. Now you can see the cassette. We also have CDs of that. All improv, noise, space rock. We make it up as we go along, and we rock hard. There's not even one iota of jazz in Ultra Bunny. It's all rock. It's all improvised. Got my noise project, Fried Man, in which I take accidental sounds and pure noise and sculpt them and manipulate them and create great big sheets of sometimes beautiful, sometimes hideously ugly noise and sound. And I've also got this thing I'm very proud of. I took the liberties of remixing an entire Residents album. This is the Residents Deconstructed Reconstructed. The reconstruction and deconstruction done by me, Malcolm Tent, the guy who wears his own t-shirt. This is all cool stuff. I'm a solo artist. I do not stop. I will not stop. I invite everybody to go onto Discogs and eBay and check out my stuff. Even if you don't want to buy it, it's darned entertaining to browse through my vast, extensive catalog. Me. Look me up. Check me out. I'm awesome. Don't need corroboration on that. I mean, of course, if anybody wants to, jump in and agree with me on that, you're certainly welcome to, but no obligations. No obligations. I would also like to mention I got some really cool stuff from the mail over the last week or two. I'm always happy to have people send me stuff. That's my... You can ignore that for the time being. You can ignore that, but my mailing address is P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut. P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. And people send me stuff, and I send them stuff back. You saw some of the great Malcolm Tent cassettes. Well, I'm pretty sure I said something like that to my pals, the Van Huskins, who sent me a cassette of their material. This is going to be good. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm already looking forward to this. This is really going to be cool. Van Huskins, the name, the presentation. You can tell right away these guys know what they're doing, and this is going to rock. We also got from Texas a little bit of black metal by the look of it. Ooh, look at this. I hope you guys can see this correctly and properly. Can I see it? Ooh, yeah, there it is. I need to take the plastic off of these things. Yes, Chapels of Gore. Can't wait to check this one out. Thanks, guys, for sending that. Also got the latest issue of the Bridge and Tunnel Crowd. This magazine is hilarious. These guys have total aesthetic that I really dig. They're very funny, very eccentric. They've really got a weird thing going on. You might get it, you might not. I'm not sure I get it, but I really like it. And it's a print zine, man. Print zines are totally cool. I love spreading something out on the breakfast table and reading it while I have my Wheaties in the morning. And one of those print zines came with the new album. I don't know if it's new, but an old album. An album anyway by this man called Bozo Schmo. My good pal Tony in New York sent me a Bozo Schmo album. This is awesome. This is like really demented, sick, twisted circus music with a real minimum of guitar. Pressed on really classy colored vinyl and with a comic book. I was happy to send a copy of my album in return for this. It's all about the trade and the swap and the cross-pollination of ideas. I hear your stuff, you hear mine. It's cool, it's fun. Nice postcard from Tony, too. So yeah, if you want to send me something, I'm happy to send you something back. P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. Yahoo! Alright, that's the preliminaries. Now it's time for the main event. Records that blew my mind the first time I heard them. And I gotta tell you, kids, if you're a music geek like I am, you probably have an entire lifetime of stories like that. The first time that you got the record, for whatever reason, somehow it crossed your path, and you dropped the needle in the groove, or, you know, maybe you pressed the play on the CD player or on the cassette player. Somehow, some way, you listened to it for the first time, and your brain just went and stuck with you forever. Oh, there's hardly a better feeling than that, my friends. And I'm going to tell you about 4 or 5 of them today, time permitting. And we're going to do it in chronological order. You know, it's like the thrill of discovery never gets old, and it's constantly renewing itself. But it's just kind of by default that a lot of these discoveries are going to happen when you're young, and your mind is like really open and really fresh and really impressionable, and you don't have an entire lifetime of things to compare something to. It's one of those epiphanies I had when I realized that I was becoming one of those dudes who would listen to some kind of new music and just like not like it. Be like, oh god, yeah, this sucks. I don't like this at all, man. And I was like, am I really becoming one of those old guys who just thinks that everything new is bad? No, that's not the case. I mean, there's so much good music being made now, right now. Right now, good music, awesome music. Some of you people out there who are watching right now are making great music. The thing is, when you get to be at my advanced age, 55, I'm going to be 56 in 3 weeks, when you've heard a lot of stuff, when you've heard an entire lifetime of music, you can't help but say, oh, well, all right, these guys are trying to be the Gang of Four, or these guys have a lot of Bruce Springsteen, or these guys totally sound like Throbbing Gristle. You get the antecedent. So what this band is doing is not fresh or original. You already know what the original sounded like, so when somebody comes along recycling a sound, it's not that exciting. So it's a lot easier when you're young. It's a lot easier when you're young. And we're going to start in the fabled year of 1978, man. 1978 was a really good year for music. I've talked about certain years for music that were nonpareil, that were top shelf, that were the toppermost of the poppermost. 1981 was one of those years. 1978 was another. I wonder how many of you people out there were even born in the year 1978. I'd be curious to see a show of hands. Nathan, Pear, Billy, John, the other John, Derek. Any old codgers out there like myself? Chime in. I'm kind of curious. If you remember 1978, you might remember a lot of really good music came out. And so I was 13 years old in 1978 and just beginning to discover the vast universe of music that there was out there. And I was growing kind of beyond FM radio, like top 40 FM radio, and sort of growing beyond what the Miami Herald music column had in it every weekend. I'm like starting to tune into other things like punk rock especially. And in 1978, I discovered, the Sex Pistols. I knew of the Clash. The first Devo album was, the big game changer. And so I'm like swimming in these waters, these totally uncharted, unfamiliar waters, and I'm just looking for more. I want to hear more, 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 more. So the weekly ritual for my family was on Sundays, we would go to the Westland Mall in Hialeah, Florida, and scatter for an hour. We'd go to the mall. Okay, meet us in front of J.C. Penney's at 3 o'clock. See you in an hour, or whatever it was. And, my brothers would go there, mom and dad would go there. I would go straight to Specs Music in the Westland Mall. Specs was a local chain in South Florida. And Specs Music in 1978 had this little tiny punk rock section. There probably were no more than maybe 15 or 20 albums in that section. I remember it well. It had a big divider that said punk rock with the 15 or 20 albums in it. And I remember I'd go there every single week, and those albums would just basically sit there because nobody in Hialeah, Florida was into punk rock. Every week I'd go there and I'd see the Richard Hell and the Voidoids album. I'd see a couple of 999 albums. I remember when the Gary Newman Two-Way Army Replicas album came out, and it sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks. But they would still bring in new titles fairly regularly. And one week I was in the Specs punk rock section, and I saw this record. And this record just looked like something I needed to check out. This was a record I knew nothing about. Knew nothing about the band, knew nothing about the record, but the record was the incredible Shrinking Dickies. Now just look at that and imagine yourself as an impressionable 13-year-old who wants to be impressionable and wants to find new stuff. You're soaking this stuff up like a sponge, and you see this for the first time. And you're already, you're 13 years old, you're a bit of a weirdo, you're a bit of a avant-gardist. You don't know what avant-garde is, but you already know that what the normal people like is not enough. You've already got a weird left-of-center sense of humor. So you see this for the first time with a big sticker on it that says, "This record's yellow." All right, that's kind of heady stuff. And then I have to put on my glasses now, but then I would, without glasses, look at the back and look at some of these song titles, man. Mental Ward, You Drive Me Ape, You Big Gorilla, Walk Like an Egg, The Midget's Revenge. I'm like, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. And this is coming out of absolutely nowhere. There's no antecedent for any of this stuff. Looking at the names of the guys in the band, Billy Club, Chuck Wagon, Leonard Graves Phillips. I don't know. That's kind of weird. I don't know if that's really the guy's name or what. Carlos Caballero. Yeah. This is pretty cool. I decided right then and there I had to buy this record by the incredible Shrinking Dickies. Plunked down my $6.99, took it home, opened it up, and saw this. Indeed, the record was yellow. This beautiful, solid, opaque yellow vinyl, the likes of which I had never seen. Wow. And then I looked at the, song titles and the label, and I saw there's a song on here called Poodle Party that clocked in at 1 minute and 9 seconds. 1 minute and 9 seconds. What on earth could that possibly sound like? I didn't know, but I had to find out. The previous benchmark had been set, by the way, by the Ramones. At this point, I'd already gotten Rocket to Russia, and there was a song on there called I Don't Care that was 1 minute and 38. Okay, well now the Dickies have beaten that with a song that's 1 minute and 9. I knew I had to hear it. The alien concept of the incredibly ridiculously short song was being expanded exponentially. So I dropped the needle in the groove, and the first thing I hear is the feedback and the piano glissando and the huge chord, and then this band playing faster than I thought any band could possibly play. This was the fastest goddamn thing I'd ever heard in my life. I couldn't believe how fast it was. Not only fast, but good. They're playing punk rock, which is really, just simplified gut bucket rock and roll, but so fast it was funny. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. And it was also really good. The songs were good. The singing was good. There were these insane 15-second long keyboard solos and 10-second long guitar solos. And the songs just went by one after another. They did Eve of Destruction. They did Paranoid. It was just nuts. It was completely nuts. I don't think a record this fast had ever been conceived of in the history, in the mind of mortal man. The Incredible Shrinking Dickies. Yeah, it didn't even take one listen. I was hooked. Totally hooked. And to this day, I don't know why the Dickies don't get a lot more credit, if they get any credit at all, for really, if not inventing, then at least writing the blueprint for hardcore. Because it's the same concept. They're doing punk rock played really, really, really fast. Faster than even the Damned were playing at that time. And the Damned were like the fastest band ever. Punk rock played faster than anybody else in 1978. I mean, a lot came from that formula. And I've only ever heard one band say specifically that they were totally influenced by the Dickies. Only one band. And even then, only once in one interview. It was a really, really old interview. I read it years ago. I don't know where the interview was. Maybe the internet research team can find it once I tell you about what it was. One interview in which the lead singer said, yeah, the band that completely opened our eyes was this band from Los Angeles called the Dickies. Because we already knew about the Sex Pistols, and that was, our gateway, but the band that really showed us the way was the Dickies. And when I read that interview, all of a sudden, the light went on over my head. It was like, yeah, duh, the Dickies. Where on earth would the Bad Brains have been without the Dickies? Listen to them. Listen to them side by side, back to back. Play the Dickies, then play the Bad Brains. And tell me that there's not a direct line from one to the other. Dude, it's right there. Punk rock played at brain-melting velocity. Listen to the way HR sings. The way that HR sings is the way that Leonard Graves Phillips sings. Dude, the Bad Brains were nipping off the Dickies. And they totally acknowledged it, to my knowledge, once. I'm sure there might be other interviews out there. Again, internet research team, you might want to get on that. But Bad Brains are the only band I know of that completely acknowledged taking the Dickies ball and running with it. And so, when you look at it that way, the Bad Brains being directly influenced by the Dickies, and then, how many bands did the Bad Brains influence? See what I'm talking about? The Dickies, indeed, however indirectly, probably did create hardcore as we know it. Think about it. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Now, the Dickies' second album, I can't hold it up and show it to you because I don't have it. And the reason I don't have it is because I quite honestly don't like it that much. The reason I don't like it that much is because, in my opinion, Malcolm Tent, the guy who wears his own t-shirt, in my opinion, the Dickies also invented another kind of music. The kind of music that I detest, which is pop punk. If you listen to the second Dickies album, Dawn of the Dickies, from I think 1979, it's pop punk. You know, it totally predates what I consider to be halfway decent pop punk, like, you know, Bad Religion, um, Descendants, All. They're basically doing what the Dickies did a few years prior with their second album, which of course got bastardized into even worse, god awful slop that pollutes the airwaves now. We won't go into that. We're keeping a positive tone to this, a positive spin to Tent Talks Tunes. But I hereby stand on my soapbox and give the Dickies credit for at least indirectly inventing two genres: hardcore and pop punk. Dickies, we salute you. All right, we fast forward to a couple years on down the road. It's approximately 1981, 1982. And I'd met a guy named Tim Powell. By this time, I am high school senior, graduating, summer between high school, first semester of college. And I am completely steeped in the underground. Punk rock, new wave, experimental. I mean, anything that could possibly come my way, I'm like just lapping it all up. And Tim Powell is one of those guys who really turned me on to some excellent, excellent music that I, you know, might have discovered eventually, but he got it to me at the right time. And Tim would let me borrow records from his massive and very impressive collection. He'd give me a stack of records and say, here, you need to hear this. And it would be, James Brown Live at the Apollo, which I remembered from being a kid, but could now appreciate as, you know, someone a little more grown up. The first Flipper album, you know, the first Cramps album, Pere Ubu, Modern Dance. He would just give me these albums to listen to. And it was like, yeah, more. One album he let me borrow, and he said, you got to hear this one to believe it, or words to that effect. It's kind of like the Dickies. Didn't know what it was, never heard of it, knew nothing about it, just came at me like a meteorite and crashed into my temple and went right into my brain. First time I heard it was this one right here, kids. The Shags, Philosophy of the World. You want to talk about music that is absolutely unique and completely wonderful and irreplaceable and impossible to duplicate? This is it. The Shags, Philosophy of the World. Three sisters from where in New Hampshire? Exeter, New Hampshire, I believe. Fremont, New Hampshire. There we go. Which I guess is next to Exeter. I don't know my New Hampshire geography that well, but three sisters from somewhere in New Hampshire making this music that nobody on planet Earth had ever heard before. And like so many people, the first time I heard it, I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is ridiculous. This is a joke. What is this? This is stupid. My Pal Foot and Things I Wonder. Why do I feel? What should I do? We have a savior. Who are parents? My companion. It's like, what is this? This is just stupid. But as it happens with the things that you really need to hear, and I believe this firmly, if you need to hear it, you're going to hear it. And even if you're too dense to get it the first time like I was, you're going to go back and you're going to hear it again, whether you like to or not. So it's one of those things. I just kept going back to this record and listening to it. And the more I listen to it, the more I still don't know if I get it. But man, I love this record. This is like just the most incredible example of, I don't know, what do you want to call it? Outsider music, naive music, completely untrained, absolutely original music ever. And learning the story of the Shags made it even more amazing. I didn't know the story of the Shags until many years later when the internet came along. And I don't want to be the spoiler. Once again, this is really worth looking up and researching because it's a hell of a story. Essentially, in a nutshell, the Shags, the three sisters, were born to parents, obviously. The father had this messianic vision that his daughters were going to be as big as the Beatles, and there were like heavy-duty religious overtones involved in it and whatnot. So he basically took them out of school, locked them up in their home, and forced them to learn how to play music. And all they ever did all day was rehearse and play and rehearse and play and do calisthenics. I mean, it's the kind of story you just cannot make up. So this music was created in a complete and utter vacuum. Somewhere in the wilderness of New Hampshire, under the tutelage of some pretty, I'm going to say messed up parenting. But the results are just astounding. Astounding. Melted my brain, still melt my brain. And I had a revelation about the Shags too, which melted my brain even more than it already had been melted. Like after hearing the record for, the better part of 25 years and learning their story via the internet, the final straw for having my brain completely fractured when it came to Shags music was having a chance to see Dot Wiggin, who was the one of the guitar players and the songwriter of the Shags. She actually came out of retirement after many, many years of, being, out of the scene and out of the loop. She came out of retirement and started playing shows again. So I went to go see her and her band, the Dot Wiggin Band, which is a bunch of young kids from New York City. I watched them play live and was astounded to see that the band was reading sheet music. They were playing all this Shags music and also music that Dot Wiggin had written more recently. They were reading it from scores. The tuning, the tempo changes, everything was scored. That blew my mind. And it still does. And apparently, I don't know if I actually believe this or not, but apparently all the stuff on the Shags album was also scored and written out. I don't know if I actually want to believe that. I kind of hope it's not true. Although it's maybe almost doubly amazing if it is true. But somewhere down the line, somebody actually scored this stuff out and made notation for it and played it off of sheets of paper. Note perfect. Tempo perfect. Yeah, shattered my brain. The Shags, philosophy of the world. I hope my brain never gets put back together. Going to take a little note, a minute to mention too, another, this is a weird syndrome maybe, another artist who I really like an awful lot, whose father had messianic visions. He was convinced that his child was the second coming of Jesus Christ. Kind of the same deal. Way up in the woods of New Hampshire, in total isolation, the father was convinced his kid was the second coming of Jesus Christ, and that kid ended up being a musician who did, whether you like it or not, for better or worse, did change the world. Yeah, it's G.G. Allen. G.G. Allen. If you really do the research and look at the history and compare the stories, there are many similarities between G.G. Allen and the Shags. I can't make it up, kids. Cannot make it up. A toast to parental New Hampshire weirdos who inadvertently create musical genius. I raise my sippy cup to you. All right, let's take a quick second here to take a look. I've already been on a half hour. This is crazy. Time flies when you're having fun doing this. Just take a little, oh, there's a lot of people tuned in. Yeah, that's great. Good to see you guys are here, and good to see that my feed is still feeding right along. Awesome. All right. So this actually might be backtracking by a few months, because I remember very clearly the first time I heard this next album. This was in December of 1981. And this was over Christmas break when I was in the 12th grade. And I don't know if my BFF is watching right now. Good old Jillski. I just met my BFF, Jill. And, you know, kindred spirits in high school. You know, my high school was like what probably most high schools are like for anybody who's creative or original or cutting edge. It was fucking wretched is what it was. Because high school does not like creativity or originality or weirdness. Nope, that is strictly frowned upon. If you're not a fucking football player at the pep rally going rah, 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 you know, you're fucked. So it was a really, what's the term I'm looking for? Effervescent, energizing. It was just really nice to actually meet somebody who thought the same way I did. You know, like I had a couple of other friends in high school who kind of thought the same way I did, but when I first met Jilski, we clicked. He was like right there. And so now here we are almost 40 years later, BFFs. Mazel tov to you, Jill. She let me borrow an album. Yes, there's that theme again. Somebody who let me borrow an album. That completely made my eyes go like this. And my ears go like that. I could almost pinpoint the exact date because it was the day that the Rolling Stones had their big simulcast from Hampton Coliseum in Hampton, Virginia in 1981. December 17th, I think. Something like that. You know, Friday, Christmas break. And I was really stoked for the Stones simulcast. Because I was then and still am now a gigantic mark for the Stones. At least up to 1981. I digress. So it was a really exciting day. The Stones were going to be on TV that night, and my new best friend had let me borrow a record. She knew I was into this punk rock stuff and thought I might like this record by a band she had just discovered. And I kind of think I knew about this band already. Not sure. I might have heard them on Radio Free Living Room. To name check that life-changing radio show again. But I know for a fact the first time I ever saw one of their records and the first time I ever heard one of their records was when my best friend Jill Elizabeth let me borrow her copy of In God We Trust Incorporated by the Dead Kennedys. When you're a high school senior and I had just turned 17, you know, we're still deep in the impressionable years. To say that I had never seen cover art like that before, well, it's not even an understatement, it's just a fact. I had never seen anything like this. I didn't even know you could do that. And then the back cover, my first example of Winston Smith collage cover art, wow. And once again, you gotta look at the song titles. Religious Vomit, Moral Majority, Nazi Punks Fuck Off, We've Got a Bigger Problem Now, Dog Bite. This stuff piqued my interest severely. And then the lyrics, thoughtfully printed on the back cover. It was kind of like the front cover. I didn't even know you were allowed to write lyrics like that. You know, blow it out your ass, Jerry Falwell. Blow it out your ass, Ronald Reagan. Ram it up your cunt, Anita, because God must be dead if you're alive. God must be dead if you're alive. What? You mean you can say that? Ugh. I could not believe it. So this opened the door to a whole new way of thinking. Just looking at the cover alone was, in the true sense of the word, psychedelic. Because psychedelic means mind expanding. My mind was expanded just looking at this record cover. Needless to say, when I got done walking home from school, I put this in on the record player immediately and was kind of nonplussed. It just sounded really weird. It was very slow and very sludgy, and the vocals just sounded weird and like nothing. It was just weird. It wasn't what I was expecting at all. And I saw it had one really long song on side 2 called "We've Got a Bigger Problem Now," and I was used to long songs, because I was already, a huge Grand Funk fan, and I loved various, live albums and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. So, okay, it's a long song, but by the time I got to side 2, I didn't know what was going on. But then when that song began, I understood, oh, wait a minute. Let's look carefully at the label. Oh, wait a minute. There it is. I don't know if you can see this. 45 RPM. It's a 45. Oh, okay. Well, that changes things. Put it on 45 and start all over again. And all of a sudden, that's when it was just like... I heard this stuff coming out the speakers, and it was just like... Ooh, like the guy in the Maxell tape ad from way back when. Just blown back. It was just like the Dickies all over again, only now it was even louder and even faster and even more frenetic. It just ratcheted things up to a whole other level of fast, furious, and fucked up. It's just what I needed. It's just what I needed. Not that idiotic song by the Cars. Just what I needed. This is just what I needed at the age of 17. Holy cannoli. The sense of humor, the anger, the sheer ferocity that these guys played these songs with, coupled with the level of musicianship and the absolutely in-your-face production and the artwork, perfect package, kids. It's perfect in every way, shape, and form. I had never heard music like this before. I had never seen art like this before. I had never conceived of lyrics like this before. God damn. Yeah, but turned my psyche into a bowl of cream of wheat. And I've been slurping off that bowl ever since. It's kind of like perpetual motion, perpetual nourishment. This album to this day I can put on and crank up real loud. Anytime, baby. Anytime. And I still love the Dead Kennedys. Still one of my favorite bands of all time. And In God We Trust Incorporated was the gateway into that weird, wonderful, wacky world. Okay, we're on a roll now. We're going to fast forward a little bit to the year 1984. Maybe 85. Don't remember exactly. I really want to say 84. 84 was another one of those pivotal years. By 1984, okay, 84. By 1984, I had discovered hardcore. And, I had a band, and I was hanging out a lot at in my opinion, the coolest record store that ever existed, which was Open Books and Records. And if I recall correctly, I hadn't started working there yet, but I was hanging out there so much that occasionally Leslie, the owner, would, throw little things at me to do. Since I was there already, I could, stuff records into bags or, write prices on stickers or something, just stuff. The kid's already there. Let's have him do something. And I remember, it's just one of those things. You never forget where you were the first time you experienced something. It was a Saturday morning. I was at Open, And Leslie was opening the mail, and she had gotten a promo pack from this label called Metal Blade Records. And she opened it up, and she took the record out, and she looked at it, and was kind of like, ooh, what's this? She put it on. Much to her credit, she put it on. Dropped the needle in the groove. Got about maybe a minute into the first song. I said, oh my God, take this off. Ugh, took it right off. But I said, I kind of like that. Can I have that? She said, yeah, $4. I said, all right, cool. Pulled out $4, or actually $4 and I think 24 cents with tax, and proudly took possession of the brand new release on Metal Blade Records, MBR 1026, 1028. I don't know, my glasses came from a dollar store. Happily took possession of this, which also fit into the category of something I'd never quite seen before, never quite heard before. You guessed it, kids, Hellhammer. Apocalyptic Raids. Man, oh man. You cannot even imagine what it was like to hear this for the first time. I mean, yeah, it was heavy metal, but it was kind of like the Dickies record, which was punk rock, but played so fast it was ridiculous. Well, okay, yeah, this is heavy metal, played so fast it's ridiculous. Man, same deal. I could not conceive of heavy metal being played this fast. And not only that fast, but really crude. I mean, this was some crude stuff, man. If you look at it technically, it's a fucking mess. Tempos are all over the place. The vocal phrasing is awkward as hell. It sounds like the lead singer is singing phonetic English. Nothing seems to add up. It's almost literally like a train wreck, with this galloping drummer who plays basically the same beat for every song. It's just total chaos. But like some of the best music in the world, it never quite falls apart. It still, by some miracle, hangs together. It still kind of remains cohesive throughout the whole thing, and it works. It completely, utterly works. It's crude, it's sludgy, it's knuckle-dragging primitive caveman heavy metal played faster than heavy metal was ever meant to be played. And not only that, again, talk about the cover art. This is some really repulsive cover art. And that's gross. Still is. 36 years later, that's gross. It's called Sitting Death. Yuck. And you turn it around, and my God, look at these guys. Satanic Slaughter? What the fuck? Denial Fiend? Slade Necros? I had never in my entire life imagined that anybody could be named Satanic Slaughter. Ever. Let alone Denial Fiend or Slade Necros. And look at the credits. Dam Buster vocals. Hellish Crossfire on Wooden Coffins. V-Axe Holocaust. Deadly Bass Dose. This shit's extreme, kids. I gotta reiterate, if somebody had already been doing this, there weren't many of them, and they were pretty damned obscure. This stuff, once again, just came out of nowhere. And I, thirsting for knowledge, craving new musical frontiers, had never seen, had never heard, couldn't even conceive of anything like this. This was beyond what any heavy metal band had ever done before, as far as I could tell. Look at those dudes. And they did it with this entire punk rock hardcore attitude. It was like fusion in the purest sense of the word, But there was so little technical proficiency. It was so raw and so crude. It was perfect. It was unique. And here I am in South Florida, of all places, discovering this for the first time as it was happening at the right time. The thing that really tipped me over the edge with these guys that made me utterly fall in love with them was, you've got the regular thanks list and the special thanks list and a giant special thanks list, but then you've got the absolutely no thanks, pure hate list. And then they name these people. Absolutely no thanks, pure hate to Rural Fuchs and, Mike Brauman or whatever. I mean, it's like, no thanks, pure hate. That was the funniest thing I think I'd ever seen in my life at that point. Best $4 I think I ever spent in my entire life. And yes, this is indeed, you can tell by the cut corner, this is the promo copy I got from Open Books and Records that fateful morning. It's been with me ever since. It's survived every purge. Doesn't matter how broke I've ever been. I've never parted with my copy of Apocalyptic Raids by Hellhammer. And I really don't foresee a time when I will. I continued to follow that band and was very intrigued when the news came out that they had changed their name to Celtic Frost. There's going to be an album out by Celtic Frost. I had Leslie special order it the day it came in. I was stoked. I paid my whatever $6.99 at the time for an EP. Took it home, and it was just like Hellhammer, only with a better drummer, or I should say more proficient drummer and louder, more powerful production. Sold. Made a lifer out of me. Shattered my brain. And I give big props too to the posthumous release of the Hellhammer demos, which are even more crude, even more ham-fisted, even more primitive than the first EP. But once again, it absolutely works. It completely works. Whatever it is, these guys had it. They truly captured lightning in a bottle with their absolute amateur take on what they called death metal. To go back to the Dickies, pretty much invented an entire genre. Death metal. That's these guys. That's Hellhammer from Switzerland, of all places. Gotta give props to Hellhammer. This is some of the best stuff you'll ever hear in my life, in your life, in our lives. To the Swiss Misters, Hellhammer. That is even more refreshing than a song called Third of the Storms, in parentheses, Evoked Damnation. Alright, gang, let me just take a quick scroll, make sure I'm still on. I'm going to assume that I am. Yeah, everybody, there we go. Cool. I got to talk about one more album here. And we're going to jump forward a lot of years. We're going to go up to the year 2005. And this is by no means the only album to completely shatter my brain during the interim. And it is also by no means the last album to have completely shattered my brain. There's been a few since then, but like I said earlier, you get older, you get a little more experienced, maybe a little more jaded. It's just harder and harder to find original music that completely blows you away. So, the brain does get shattered, it just happens less frequently. Thank you. Less frequently. So, 2005. I am at the New York City Punk and Underground Record Fair, curated by my good friend Mark Littell. That was '05. The New York City Punk and Underground Record Fair is still very much in existence and simply waiting for an opportunity to be allowed to be held. Just saying. So I'm there at the New York City Punk and Underground Record Fair when this dude who I know, his name is Mike, comes up to me. Mike was a trashy. Mike worked at Bleecker Bob's Records. Mike had a record label. Liked Mike. Mike's a good guy. Didn't really care for most of the music on his record label. The record label was called Welfare Records. I love the name. But, the music, it was punk rock, punk and hardcore, and, just didn't really float my boat. I really honestly wasn't into it that much. So, Mike comes up to me, and he says, hey, I got a new release. Do you want to buy some? I looked at it. I said, no. And he said, well, okay, well, here, take a promo CD of it anyway, and, just maybe listen to it. I was like, all right, cool, thanks. And once again, much to his credit, he actually went the extra kilometer and gave me one to listen to. If I had just been turned down cold by somebody, I would have said, all right, screw it, I'll keep it. But Mike gave me the CD. And I looked at it somewhat mildly, not that interested in it at all, really. Because it wasn't one of the newfangled punk/hardcore bands that Mike released on his label a lot. It was actually an old archival release of some sort. And I saw the name, and I kind of recognized the name. Might as well show you guys what I'm talking about. It was Pure Hell. I was like, yeah, Pure Hell. I've seen that name. They were one of those, like, footnote bands. Pure Hell opened up for the New York Dolls during the New York Dolls' last stand in 1975. Pure Hell opened up for Sid Vicious at Max's Kansas City. Pure Hell, one of the few black punk bands of the 70s. You'd see, Pure Hell's name on an old, CBs or Max's ad or whatever. Just like these little one-sentence references here and there. So you figure out Pure Hell, black punk band. Nobody's heard of them. They never did anything. Just one of those, just one of those bands that kind of jumped on the bandwagon at CBGB and, tried to do punk rock and faded away. Nobody ever heard of them. Nobody cared. Whatever. Who cares? Who cares? So that's all I knew about Pure Hell. So when Mike gives me the CD copy of this album on his label, I was like, whatever. So, I drive back home, and I get home, and, stick it on the shelf. Under normal circumstances, and you got to remember, too, I still had my record store at this time. The great Trash American Style. Everybody raise one right now for Trash American Style. Trash American Style, my record store. I still had it at the time. And so, like, promos would just come in all the time. Every day in the mail. Promo CDs, promo cassettes, promo albums. I would just stick them on a shelf and, like, try to get around to playing them eventually at some point. The thing that had changed a little bit by this time was I had started doing radio. I had my radio show on WNHU in West Haven. Mr. Tent's Wild Ride. Mr. Tent. That's me. See the resemblance? Yes. I started doing my radio show in 2005. And I'm still doing it to this day. Once again, the minute I'm allowed to go back into the studio, I'll be back live on the air. Fingers crossed. I started doing radio. So because I had to fill 2 hours every week, there was a bit more urgency in that big pile of promos. Because I had to play new stuff. I can't play Devo 2 hours every week, although God knows it's very tempting to do so. People get bored after a while. So, okay, got to find new stuff to play. Here's all these promos. Let's start listening to them. And I figured I would play the Pure Hell because, like I said, I knew Mike. He was a good guy. Just out of courtesy, I'd play this CD on his label by this probably really lousy footnote band. Fine. What have I got to lose except a couple of minutes? Put it in. Press the play button. CD starts playing. About halfway through the second song, I very calmly walked over to the telephone, picked it up, Looked up Mike's number in the Rolodex, called him. I said, Mike, how many CDs come in a box? You get them from the manufacturer. He said 20. I said, send me a box of Pure Hell CDs right now. I need this. No pun intended, but what the hell? This blew my mind, baby. It was, I try to avoid profanity because profanity gets to be really passé after a while. It was good. It was so good. I couldn't believe how good it was. The CD came with a bonus DVD, and the bonus DVD was of a promo film that they cut in 1978. So, I don't know if it was that night or if it was sometime later, I put the DVD in and saw these guys playing live in an empty studio, and it was just like a tank rolling over a building. The level of musicianship in this band, the ferocity that they played with, the total look of the band, the attitude, forget it. It was just a total goddamn package. Imagine if you haven't heard Pure Hell yet, just think Dead Boys, but hopped up on speed instead of junked out, and with a level of skill on the instruments that is about, 5 or 6 levels above the Dead Boys. Forget it. Forget it. How many songs does this album? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 songs on this record, and there is not one second of dead space anywhere on this record. It kills. The DVD kills. If you guys want a thrill, go onto YouTube right now and look up the live version, the live in the studio version of the song Noise Addiction. I'm going to help you out. Song right there, Noise Addiction. Right there. Side 1, track 1. The live in the studio version of this. Just watch it. And if it doesn't make you a believer, you don't believe. All I know is that I've played this album incessantly for people over the years, and it was a very, very rare occasion that I didn't play it for somebody and have them say, I'll take it. It happened once or twice, but generally I would order those boxes of CDs off of Mike 20 at a time. Just play it for people and let it sell itself, man. Sell itself. This really, if you're going to talk about strict punk rock, this band shows what punk rock could be. It shows maybe where punk rock could have gone. It's so good. And so it made me really curious to know about how come these guys aren't world famous? Why are they just a footnote band? What gives? So I called up Mike and said, Mike, how'd you find this? And he told me the whole story. Basically, Pure Hell were the proteges, the clients of this guy named Curtis Knight. And if you guys have seen my past webcasts on records, you might remember once I did a bit of an episode, or part of an episode on Curtis Knight and his role in the umpteen Centrifugalian shitty god-awful Jimi Hendrix rip-off cash-in albums. Curtis Knight was the lead singer of a band called Curtis Knight and the Squires, a second-tier New York City bar band who were just lucky enough to have Jimmy sit in with them on a couple of sessions, which then got licensed and issued and reissued and regurgitated and puked up and overdubbed and fucked with, and it just ridiculous, endless tidal wave of garbage releases, all under the name of Jimi Hendrix, but in reality it's Curtis Knight. So Curtis Knight, at some point, got into band management and managed Pure Hell. and from what I'm told and what I'm read, basically managed them into complete oblivion. I still don't know the entire story. I would love to hear it. I would love it if somebody wrote like a book on these guys, or at least a really, really good magazine article. You know, kind of just managed them into nothingness, and they recorded this album in 1978. The tapes sat in storage. Curtis Knight died, and Mike from Welfare Records was able to, I don't know how he even heard of it, but somehow he heard that the estate was for sale. He bought all the master tapes and the print and the photo archive and everything relating to Pure Hell. The promo video, and he put it all out. It's really good stuff. The album's got some pretty, lots of photos, a little bit of liner note action. But I want to know more. I want to know more about this band and how they morphed from being a glam band in 1974 to being this juggernaut of punk rock, and just exactly how it was that Curtis Knight or whoever dropped the ball and didn't make them world famous. This album stands up right now. I just might play it when I'm done. Really loud. Like, really loud. God damn, can you imagine Sid Vicious at Max's Kansas City having to go on stage after these guys? I would have killed myself right then and there rather than try to do that. Forget it. Forget it. This record in the year 2005 shattered my brain the first time I heard it, and still does now. And I don't know what its in-print status is, but I hope it's in print somewhere out there, because it deserves to be heard. It deserves to be heard. I will, of course, very quickly mention that there are a couple of other things that deserve to be heard. My UK tour CD with the amazing interactive sleeve deserves to be heard. You need to hear this. You need to look up Malcolm Tent on Discogs and eBay. Look at that. That's an ad right there. Screenshot, please. Look up Malcolm Tent on Discogs and eBay. Because I've got my UK tour CD, the introduction to Malcolm Tent. I, of course, have my absolutely classic anthology LP, The Multiple Moods of Malcolm Tent. 14 bands, 14 songs, all featuring me. And a whole bunch of other stuff. Discogs and eBay. I also invite you to look up my label, TPOS, because I got a lot of stuff out on record, tape, CD, 8-track, reel-to-reel, VHS, DVD audio, and hopefully soon to come wax cylinders and wire recorders. We do it all for you. TPOS and Malcolm Tent. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed my speculations and my prognostications and my ranting and raving and rambling about those 5 albums that completely shattered my brain. Maybe you guys will go check some of it out. Maybe you'll tell me about some of the music that shattered your brain. Leave a comment. Look me up on Facebook. Send me a postcard. I love postcards. Just one more time, if I can find the address. There we go. Send me a postcard. P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. I'll write you back. I love postcards. I like writing postcards. They're fun. Postcards are fun. And, yeah, man, I got thousands, literally thousands more albums I can talk about, which I will very happily do so on the next episode of Tent Talks Tunes. I'm signing out. I should be back at about 167 hours. So until we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.